welcome to the Festival of Storytellers.
I can't tell you how excited I am to be on right now. It's been a couple of weeks of excitement, getting prepared, and I've done a lot of things in my life, but this has got to be close to the top.
Thank you, and Reader's Magnet, and thank you, John, for putting this forth and taking the chance on us authors in presenting this out to the world.
I've enjoyed this immensely, Joanne.
Ellie, so have I. Thank you for who you are, and thank you, Reader's Magnet. You all are beautiful, and you've worked so very hard, and we are blessed.
We are.
I thank everybody that's involved with this process, because we know writers need readers and writers need publishers. We thank Reader's Magnet and everybody that's involved. I love Reader's Magnet. They say, we share your stories with the world.
Hello. Forgive my voice. I'm unfortunately right now getting over the flu. So I'm a little groggy and a little under the weather. But I'll try to hopefully keep you interested in what I want to talk about. And it's about this book, Golden Men. Okay. The Power of Gay Midlife 2022. The reason I put the 2022 in is that the book originally came out in 2000. And at the time, excuse me, at the time, it was the only book dealing with gay men and aging. And there's a long history to that. Partially, when I started at the University of Chicago in the Committee on Human Development, I left a pre-med program because I felt that this was much closer to my interests, because this program was an interdisciplinary program that saw the individual as a psychological being in a physical body in a social cultural environment. And we had to study all aspects of that. And so that was the beginning of starting to look at the totality of a person and not just simply a psychological being, which is what I rebelled against in terms of the psychology department, which thought we had a psych department at the university, very traditional. They thought we were absolutely bizarre because we studied sociology, anthropology, biology, genetics, as well as our core courses. And so one of the important things about these courses is that the department was really focused on developmental issues. They differed on many psychology departments because they believed strongly that we grew continuously as we aged, and that we had what we call developmental tasks that at every age there are challenges which we had to surmount and learn to deal with. And that continued. It did not hold on to the idea that somehow we were stuck at 3 or 4 or 5 years old and the rest of our lives was just a repeat of that. And this was remember, this was in the 50s. So this was very, very new and considered pretty unacademic, as some people would say. And so I started thinking about this with the developmental tasks. And I've written some papers, written professional papers. But after AIDS hit, and I had the experience of working with a number of gay men who, at that time, when it was actually just called GRID, the gay-related immune deficiency, I discovered that there were a number of gay men who actually feared growing old as a gay man more than dying. And I actually used a very clear example of this was 2 men, both referred to me by the same physician, both were HIV positive, and both were told they had about a year to live. And they both were very depressed, and so the physician referred them to me. And what was interesting is that I said the same question to both men. I said, okay, now that you know that you're going to die, how do you want to live? One of the men, how can I put it, was pretty shocked by what I said. And, excuse me. And so what he did was basically continue doing his daily coke, and within a year, he was dead. The other man, when I asked him the question, stopped and said, I didn't expect to hear you say that. And he started thinking, well, what could he do for the rest of his life that was being told would only be a year? He took charge of his life. He decided not to do some of the medications that his physician had recommended, as well as doing some other things about planning for his life. And the last I knew of him, he was still alive in 2005. And I use that as an example about the taking charge of one's life. And I wrote in a local gay newspaper about this. And as I started thinking more and more about these issues and the fear of growing old as a gay man, I realized that there is a need for a book that would be of use to gay men. And I say gay men because that was at that point in my life, those were the principal men or principal patients that I was working with. Now, my background was in community mental health. And I had been working in basically low-income areas for a number of years, and sort of by chance got into a private practice. Now, I started thinking about this, and I wrote a professional paper about aging, about the developmental tasks, and the idea that there was a plan of action that gay men could take to help them deal with their aging. And so I wrote this professional paper. It got accepted in a professional journal, and it was basically forgotten. And then I showed it to an editor, a man who was actually probably the most well-known gay editor in the country. And we had lunch. We went back to his office, and he looked at me and he said, "There's a book here, write it." And I can tell you, I did not want to write a book. Though people had told me I should be writing, yada, 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 and all that, I didn't want to write it. But this man in particular, being bluntly the most famous gay editor in the country, who was responsible for almost all of the books at that time that were written by gay men. So him saying that to me pushed me. And so I started working on the book. Now, the book came out in 2000. And the reason why I decided to republish the book, but with a new epilogue, because when I first published the book, it was Avon Press published the book. I felt that I could not speak for anyone else other than white gay men. If anyone wanted to take what I said and use it, fine. But I didn't feel I had the right to say that this is for everyone. Well, since the book came out, I have gotten feedback over the years from many, many people saying simply, this book applies to me and I'm not gay, or I'm a lesbian, et cetera, et cetera. And so I wanted to republish the book, and I'm seeing a question. Okay, let's see. What's your thoughts about a country or a state that hates LGBTQ? Well, that is quite a topic. I would love to get into that, I think, at some other point when it would not sort of and stop the flow of what's happening now. But it does connect with something, though. If you're raised in a country that is very anti-gay, or in a religion that's anti-gay, what happens is you eventually take that in and start applying it to yourself. So just as we need to get rid of internalized homophobia in order to successfully come out, we also need to get rid of internalized ageism in order to age successfully. Now, maybe this is changing the topic a little bit. The idea of why do so many countries hate? Now, some people might argue that we always have to have some opposition, some other that we rebel against or we need to feel superior to. And I have a hard time distinguishing between the people who use that, the hatred of LGBTQI people, as a way to maintain power, as a way to maintain, quotes, their superiority over other people. You know, that's a topic that really we could spend a whole session on. Let me see, what else do I wanted to? Oh, okay, there's a question. Do you have any idea if there's a law that supports or protects an individual that is part of the LGBTQ? I'm not quite clear what the question is, but there are laws supporting our rights. Now, they're fragile, they're not permanent, they can be taken away at any time, as long as you have people fighting and don't want to give us equality. So we do have laws protecting us, but it also depends where you live, which state you live in. You know, I happen to be living both in Mexico now and the United States. And I live in New York City, which in a way is a bubble because we're very protected in New York, but not people who are out in, in the sticks and far away, which also reminds me of one of the motivations for my book was the fact that I wanted to have a book that someone outside of a big city who doesn't have a therapist, doesn't have the money for a therapist, or simply there are none available. So I wrote this as a self-help book with the whole idea that you could use this book as therapy. There's a whole developmental approach to the book. The book is divided into mind, first body, mind, and then spirit. And then each of the chapters has a series of questions, but there's a lot of theory in the book about what makes us different, what makes us have to go through what we go through in order to come out the other side. Now, the question that I'm just been asked is, how did I accept that I'm gay? Well, I knew from a very early age that somehow I had an attraction to men that was secret. I couldn't tell anyone about it. I couldn't even identify it as sexual. It was just a feeling. Somehow I knew I was different. And what happened was that I came out very early. I was sexually very precocious, and I got arrested at age 14 for being gay, which clearly changed my life. Oh, there was the question that someone, oh, have you ever considered the possible criticisms you may receive upon writing your book? How did you address these? The only criticism that I received from some people was that I was giving the secrets of therapy away. You know, I wanted this book to be out there so that anyone can use it. I specifically wrote it so that you could do it by yourself, or you could gather a bunch of your friends. And because the questions have a progression, and they go towards a final destination, which is basically about how to deal with aging successfully. And what I liked about it is that I had therapists write me saying they found the questions very helpful and they were using them in their own therapy, that they just simply, okay, now what your parents' reaction when you told them you were gay? Well, as I said, I didn't tell them I was gay. The police told them. And to be very blunt, my mother, when she came to the police station and we were driving home, she said to me, if I ever do this again, she'll kill herself. Well, I tried to not be gay, but I had a family that wouldn't let me alone, and they kept accusing me when I was not doing anything. I wanted to, and so when I was 17, I started being actively gay again. And if you can believe it, my brother had been a Marine sergeant, had the police follow me to the home of the guy that I was seeing. And so I was shipped from California to Chicago, where my father lived. They were divorced. And then finally, I knew that I had to live a gay lifestyle. That was who I was. And I know this sounds, well, it's really pretty remarkable that a 17-year-old could say this. But when I was going to be leaving home to go to Chicago to be openly gay, my mother reminded me about that what she had said about committing suicide. And I just said, look, if I can't be who I am, I'll kill myself. And then you'll be guilty for the rest of your life. And if you kill yourself because I'm gay, then I'm going to feel guilty for the rest of my life. So let's decide which one of us will kill ourselves and which one of us will feel guilty for the rest of our lives. Well, needless to say, she did not kill herself. I didn't see her for 3 years when I went to Chicago. I didn't see much of my family for many years. So the question is, what's my opinion on gay marriage? I unfortunately was one of the people who opposed opposed gay marriage. My rationale at the time was more of the old liberation versus assimilation idea. We're just trying to be like, the non-gays. Oh, which, by the way, in my book, the only term that's used is gay and non-gay, because I wanted gay people to read a book which makes gay the standard and non-gay the outlier, the people outside, the others. So initially, I was against the gay marriage. And basically it's because I felt it was duplicating the heterosexist norms. And so I had to go through some pretty heavy thinking about it and realized that getting married for many people is about a social commitment. It's about letting the world know what kind of relationship the two men or two women have. And it's about community support. So I've changed on that. If someone is getting married because they feel only by being married are they complete, then that's another issue. And that kind of being married, I can say I would be against. Because it's not about getting social approval or feeling, oh, I've now achieved something. It's about stating to the world, this is the kind of relationship we have, and it's a building. It's the creating a family. Okay, I'm not seeing any more questions right now. Okay. Well, let's go back to the book. As I said, I wrote the epilogue because so many things have happened since the book came out in 2000. I mean, the book came out in 2000. It was finished probably 98, 99. But as you know, with books takes a long time when you're dealing with a publishing house. And unfortunately, Avon Books had originally purchased, or I don't know if you'd use the word purchase, signed the contracts. And then just before the book came out, they were bought by HarperCollins. And HarperCollins literally threw out all contracts and all agreements so that there was no publicity, there was nothing. They only focused on books they considered bestsellers. So I had to go peddle the book throughout the country. Okay, question is, what problems do you think someone goes through when they found out they are gay? Okay, that's very relevant for this book because coming out is a very important process, and it just doesn't happen overnight. One can be aware that one is homosexual, one is attracted to men, or as a woman attracted to women. But there is a big jump between that kind of awareness and identification with a group, so that gay is for me not synonymous with homosexual, because homosexual says, in a sense, what your sexual activity is. Gay is identifying with a group. And that's an important distinction, because coming out, the first step in coming out is, number one, being authentic to yourself. But then two, it's reaching out and identifying with the community. And I'm actually going to get into that at the next session more, because that's a very important concept, that coming out teaches us how to deal with life problems. Because most non-gays do not have to deal with the issues we deal with, where we put absolutely everything at risk in order to be authentic, to be ourselves. And there's the risk of losing family, friends, job. And as a friend of mine who was a nun and didn't come out until she was in her 30s, she had to deal with God. So I'd like to, the next time, go more into how coming out is a very important learning process, and what it teaches us, skills that we can use throughout our lifetime. Okay, so I thank you for your questions. I will be on tomorrow, and I'll pick up, in a sense, where we left off about why coming out is a model for how to deal with aging. Okay, so thank you for listening, for participating, and see you tomorrow at 11. Am I correct?